Hello there, it's me again, Mr. Eric, and I'm doing this video about the simple key to understanding Bible prophecy so you can read the Bible yourself and not have to depend on other people to tell you how about prophecies. You know, they seem like they're complicated and they're not. First off, prophecy is a telling of events before they happen. History is a telling of events after they happen. And fortunately for us, the Bible is not really one book. It's a bunch of small books written over a long period of time. So we have books that have prophecies, and then maybe 100 years later, a book would come out with the outworking of that prophecy in the form of history. And the people that lived at that time, when that was working out, they were familiar with the prophecies. And when they saw how it worked out, they were amazed at the detail and how much it matched with what was actually said. Now, there have been people over the years that when the prophecies worked out, they said, well, you know, that's just a lucky guess. But here we are, you know, thousands of years later, and thousands of lucky guesses later. And you have to ask yourself, will the last few prophecies left in the Bible also be lucky guesses? And another thing you can ask yourself is, if Bible prophecy is true, how can I benefit from it? You know, I mean, that's a good tool to know what's going to happen in the future. You can plan your life accordingly. So anyways, that's what we're going to be talking about. So you can read the Bible for yourself, figure out the prophecies for yourself, and then take action. Due to time constraints, I will not quote a single scripture. Oftentimes, if I'm talking to somebody about the Bible, I'll have a Bible with me and I can show them things. But we do not have time. All right, the first key to understanding Bible prophecy is all Bible prophecies relate back to the very first Bible prophecy. You remember in the Garden of Eden, God created two people, created a whole world for them to live on, and by virtue of the fact that He created them, He made the decision that He would govern them or give them rules to live by. Another great powerful spirit creature appeared to the two people that lived at that time and told them, you know, you could rule yourself just as well. Not a lot of detail about what went on between those two people back then, but we do know that they made the conscious decision to govern themselves and not listen to God's rules anymore. And the way they signified this was by breaking the only rule that God had given them. He had a tree out there. He said, don't eat this piece of fruit. The tree was not a metaphor for the world in general. The fruit was not a metaphor for sex. I've heard all these silly little explanations of it. It was really a tree with real fruit. Well, immediately after that, God uttered the very first prophecy. And basically what it is, He said that there would be a war over a long period of time between the seed of this powerful spirit creature and his seed. And this powerful spirit creature, we know him today as his name, which is Satan in English. And God, we know Him by His name, which is Jehovah in English. And He said that as this battle went on, that Satan's seed would injure the seed of the woman, but the seed of the woman, which is Jehovah's organization, this seed of this woman would kill forever the seed of Satan. And so this is the very first prophecy, and it all is about the right to rule. Does Satan have the right to rule, or humans have the right to rule themselves, or does God have the right to rule? And every prophecy from then on is about that same thing. You know, do humans have the right to rule? And there's details about it. On God's side, it's been established that God made Jesus Christ the king of His kingdom. And so most of the prophecies about God's kingdom are about this seed, Jesus Christ. Prophecies about where He would be born, the nature of His birth, things He would do while He was alive, how He would die, all of this. On the other side, it talks about Satan's rulership, and it would tell the names of governments that as they would come and go, and And the governments that were far in the future, it wouldn't tell the name, but it would describe the ways they would act. And these, now, the Bible is a history book. It's a history of this prophecy, but it's not a history of the world. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it would first, God says that all the nations combined are nothing but dust on scales to Him. You know, it's like if you go to the store and buy a sack of potatoes, and you put it up there, and the cashier puts it on that scale. You don't go, wait a second now, I want you to dust that scale off first because I want this to be accurate. I don't want to pay too much, because it ain't going to, the dust on the scale ain't going to affect how much you pay for that sack of potatoes. And that's the way God feels about governments. They're nothing to Him. He doesn't even consider them. But secondly, if you were to write a book about all the failed attempts at human beings to govern themselves, the book would be bigger than a house, you know. So, and that's why you won't find stories about the Mayans and the Incans and all that. But you just, the only nations that are mentioned in prophecy are the nations that held sway over the people God happened to be using at the time. Most people are familiar with the fact that for a long time God used the Jews. He would use them to teach the world a lesson, you know, about right and wrong and His ability to rule. So if you look at secular history, they all agree. As far as I know, there's no secular historian that won't agree with what I'm about to tell you. And that is that the Jews really were slaves to Egypt. That was the first government that ruled over them. And you remember it in Ten Commandments, the story of Ten Commandments on TV. Moses was enslaved in Egypt and they escaped. Well, a lot of people don't know, but the historians know that years later, when Jews started to do bad things and God got tired of the way they were acting, He sent the Assyrians to conquer them. Later, they were conquered by the Babylonians. Then the Babylon, and these are all world powers. Babylon was conquered by the Medes and the Persians. And then the Medes and the Persians were conquered by Greece. And the final world power mentioned in the Bible by name is Rome, because the seventh and last world power that will exist on this planet did not exist at the time that the Bible was completed. Now, years from now, when the last book of the Bible may be written, they'll probably be mentioned. Now, I'm not going to tell you who the seventh world power is, but I will tell you who it's not. Because this offer of being the world ruler, while Rome was the sixth world power, the offer to one man to be the ruler of the seventh world power was made by Satan to Jesus, and he turned it down. So I can tell you for a fact, Jesus and His government is not the seventh world power. In fact, He confirmed this later when He was before Pontius Pilate. He said, "Are you trying to assert Caesar?" And Jesus said, "No, I'm not taking authority from the same source." So He was saying, you know, Satan gave all these world rulers their power. I'm getting my world rulership from God. Now, this is all you got to understand. Any prophecy about a kingdom is basically about a government. It's always going to be those seven. No other kingdoms are mentioned in prophecy other than the seven: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and the world power today. Now, this is not prophecy like Nostradamus with a bunch of flowery poetry type stuff with no reference points. You know, at one point Alexander the Great was described as a goat with one horn, and the horn got broke off, and then four horns came up. But it tells you that goat was Greece, the one horn was Alexander the Great, the four that came up were his generals. When Nostradamus made a prediction like that, it was just, you got the goat and the horns and no explanation for what it was. And it's not like today's psychics where you got 10% accuracy or 20% accuracy. The Bible prophecy is 100% accurate all the time. Another thing about Bible prophecy, it's not dependent on the Mayan calendar. That comes up a lot now, and I don't know why, but God didn't say, well, whatever the Mayans put on their calendar, that's when I'll have to adjust my thinking. But another thing that makes Bible prophecy different than other prophecies is just not hard to understand. You can understand it. It was put in the Bible, put in the common language of the day, and over time has been, translated into the common languages of today.